Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to How to Gain Total Control Over Your SaaS Communications. My name is Tim McLean. I'm the Director of Marketing here at thinQ, and really excited to spend the next 15 or 20 minutes with you going into this topic. This is something we hear about a lot, is that we have a lot of SaaS platform owners who run sales or marketing platforms, or have tied their platform into something like Twilio, Nexmo, Plivo, and they're looking for more control because they may have set up their platform when they were small in terms of scale. They're doing either voice or text messaging. And as they've grown, they're having scalability issues. They're having quality control issues with the quality of the voice and the delivery of their text messages. And I'm excited to share with you some tips on how to take total control over your communications. So with that, just want to go ahead and dive right in. So the fact that a lot of folks don't have total control of their communications can really impact their bottom line. And we did a little bit of research here and really found that, unfortunately, folks who you have any sort of a service interruption or an outage, knock on wood, nobody wants those. And on average, a SaaS platform can lose anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000 per downtime cost. And on average, for high priority applications, SaaS applications, that can add up to, on average, about $68,000 per hour. So nobody wants to see any of that happen. Definitely not having control can be a huge drain on your bottom line. And the good news is that there are ways to take control to route around these kinds of issues when they happen, and really take control so that you can sleep better at night, but also not have to contemplate these kinds of issues going forward. So in fact, if we go back in time and we did a deep dive to find where there were service interruptions and issues that had impacted both sort of traditional providers of voice and messaging, but also folks that have high priority SaaS platforms. And everybody from voice carriers who have hundreds of thousands of customers who lost access to be able to make calls or send text messages, all the way through the power outages we heard about last year in the Western US that led to carrier downtime for more than 100,000 folks. Lots of issues with some of the larger carriers out there who do occasionally have issues. And even, unfortunately, something like Twilio, who has really been known for being really stable and sort of a bedrock of performance. Really, when we look back, just in March alone, they've had more than 61 incidents that have impacted voice and messaging. And you can certainly go over and take a look at their status page and take a look at that. So really the question is, if you don't have control, if a carrier or a provider has issues, both on the voice or messaging side, even if you've tied your platform to something like Twilio, Nexmo, Plivo, is there something you can do about it to take more control? And the answer obviously is yes. So one of the next steps that happens when these issues actually happen is that you're encouraged to file a support ticket. And unfortunately, we find, and I hear stories about this all the time when I talk to thinQ customers, is that sometimes if they have, if they only have one carrier or two carriers as part of their tech stack, they may file those support tickets, go to Down Detector, notice that their carrier or their carriers are having issues. And those support tickets, while it's nice to know that they're having an issue, getting replies to those support tickets can take, 4, 8, 12, sometimes, hours, sometimes 3 to 4 days on average when some of these larger carriers have issues. And a lot of cases, what they'll tell you is, yes, we did identify an issue and it's been solved. Thank you for your business. Well, you don't really know what happened. You don't know if there was anything that was, unlocked that would allow you to take control of that issue. You just don't know. You don't know what they fixed. And sometimes even it's not necessarily a sort of a carrier-wide outage. It's just you have a set of calls going to a certain destination and they're not getting through. You don't know why. And it'd be nice to be able to take control of that and say, well, instead of trying XYZ carrier going into, say, this rural area or this location where I'm trying to send calls from my contact center or from my SaaS platform, try these other ones instead and increase your call delivery. Those kinds of tools just don't exist, but they do exist now, which you're about to find out today. So the other thing that you can do is, before we get to the solution, is set up monitoring systems to keep tabs on your carriers or your providers. So there's certainly challenges if you're trying to use something like Twitter or even bookmarking the status pages of the carriers or the providers that are providing your critical voice and SMS services. That's fine, but who wants to be able to, who wants to be scrolling through multiple sources of information to find that? But really, just to, by the way, to be super clear, there is a way to actually set this up to be more automatic for you. Instead of having to wait, finding out that your calls are failing, for instance, and then going to the status pages of your carriers and looking, you can actually set up an automatic system to be alerted. Sometimes you can go directly to your carrier, your provider, for instance, and actually go to their status page, and you'll notice you can subscribe for updates. And one of the ways you can subscribe is to enter in your cell phone number, and they will text you whenever there's an issue that's impacting their customers. I certainly recommend that. If you have 1, 2, 3 carriers, most of you guys have one provider. By the way, this includes Twilio, Nexmo, Plevo. They have these status pages. Go to subscribe and update, right to your cell phone. So no matter where you are, no matter what time it is, you can at least get alerted to these things. And the other thing to use, which we find, I have a couple customers who use this, is Uptime Robot. This is a service that, as long as you don't use, I think it's up to 10 alerts. It's totally free. And it's basically kind of the same idea as subscribing to the alerts, on the left-hand side at the carrier level, which you can actually go to a certain page on your provider's website and notice the words that they use. So you see here on the right is if a keyword if the keyword incident actually appears anywhere on the page, it'll refresh every 5 minutes. And if the word incident pops up, you will get a text message. You will get an email. It's actually a very straightforward sort of a robot that allows you to basically sniff certain copy on certain web pages, and when either they exist, those keywords either exist or don't exist, you will be notified. So people use this for a lot of different purposes, but certainly keeping up to date on status pages is one use for that. So certainly something you can do to keep up to date. But I want to offer you guys a better way, and that is, how do you take control of your critical communications, whether you're a SaaS, whether you have a VoIP need, whether you're a contact center, whatever it is that you're doing. But I'm certainly specifically talking to our SaaS folks out there who have a platform. That basically here, if you notice on the right-hand side, this should be the first breath of fresh air, is what if you could have total transparency and control of your voice systems as well as messaging? Well, with thinQ, that is actually what we offer. So imagine having access to 40 carriers, which gives you full control, and allows you to turn these carriers on and off at will. You can create route blocks down to a very granular level, and make sure that you're only using the carriers that you'd like to have en route. But I think this is a little bit. I think for a lot of you, it's very interesting because you probably have been living with one carrier, one source, to fill this critical need. And now all of a sudden you have 40 choices, 40 different carriers that can help you deliver your calls. And I'll get to some examples in a minute. And what I'd like to do is show you, let's say the same thing happens now. Let's say instead of Twilio or instead of the carrier that you have now, let's say that there's an incident. What do you do? Well, with thinQ, you have a couple proactive tools. So the first thing is, I'm going to guarantee you one of the things you're going to find is while you're in operation, while your platform is operating, you're going to find out that you're going to have calls going to a certain area that are going to have some call quality issues, whether it's post-dial delay, whether you just can't deliver calls or just not getting through. And the first thing is, instead of filing a ticket and praying, you can actually log into thinQ.io, our platform, and you can actually punch in, we already know the 2 number, because it's part of your setup with us, and we need to know where it's going to. And you can actually look at a list of all the calls that have been made and click on it and actually pull what's called a PCAP trace. And you notice here, upper left, it's like, look, we started the call, we're giving it a try, we're trying different carriers, and it will actually roll through the carriers that you have turned on as part of your trunk setup and actually show you the entire, call path all the way down to where it had an issue, all the way down to the bottom right-hand corner. And you'll say, oh, it's that carrier that's having an issue. And you can immediately go and take that carrier out of route. for a given amount of time, for a day, for a week, whatever you want, then have it automatically come back online after the time has expired. That is what total control feels and looks like. And instead of hearing from your contact center or your platform folks that these calls aren't getting through, and multiple days later, you're still waiting for a support ticket, suddenly they'll start going through within minutes, and you have that control, which is really what this is all about, giving you guys that control. So again, this is what it looks like on the right-hand side. So once you know where the issue is happening, and once you know what carrier is involved, you can actually go in here and say, all right, at this given MPA and XX expiring, say 2 days from now, I want to take this carrier out of route, and that will happen. And then calls should continue to be delivered, and we'll try different carriers. So that's really what this control is all about. So a great example of a SaaS platform that came to work with thinQ for exactly this reason is ServiceTitan. And I'm going to bet that many of you sort of in the SaaS software platform industry in general have heard of ServiceTitan. They're very, very successful. And they built a platform for commercial and residential plumbing, electrical, HVAC, and other field service businesses. And it does a lot of things. It's basically the operating system for these types of companies. And what they found out is, as part of providing this service, was they were doing call tracking, right? So all these local businesses were using the ServiceTitan platform to route their calls through ServiceTitan for tracking purposes, for logging purposes, for lots of different reasons. And really what Damon Prater, who's over there, one of their carrier operations folks who decided to come over and work with us at thinQ, discovered that, look, when they have call delivery issues, especially to rural areas where there's not a lot of carriers out there, or there's carriers that aren't necessarily high quality, and other ones that you can use. They were having trouble. So some of their customers would call and say, "Hey, ServiceTitan, I'm having trouble, getting calls through to Peoria, Illinois, or whatever it is," and when they would file support tickets with their carrier with the plans that they had set up, they were not getting quick replies, and there was no way for them to research their issues and solve their telephony issues on their own. So what they decided to do was move away from these inflexible static voice services with these traditional carriers and try thinQ, the cloud voice solution with more than 40 carriers and ultimate flexibility. And they were able to set it up inside of their tech stack with very little developer lift, almost none. And they were able to install it in their test environment, give us a test on the quality of the calls, the carrier control, and they were immediately impressed with how much better the calls sounded, but also the level of control that they were able to have. And now they're able to customize the routing of their calls. They're able to research calls and mitigate quality issues on their own without filing these support tickets. And now they're getting more calls delivered into rural service areas, and they're saving money. And they have total control, and honestly, they couldn't be happier. So, hey, if you can get total control and save money and get higher quality calls for your SaaS platform, why wouldn't you give it a try and leverage it? So that's ServiceTitan. Another SaaS platform, this is more on the marketing side, who also does call tracking, but it's more call analytics and lead to call automation, is TrackDrive. And what they found out was that Twilio and Plivo were good solutions for them to deliver their communications when they were smaller. But as they scaled, they realized that they needed more than 1 or 2 calls per second. They needed 10. They needed 15 calls per second across their platform. And they also were unable to route their calls at the best price and quality. And again, they had the same issue when they had quality issues. The support tickets were slow to be responded to by traditional carriers. What they did was they came over to thinQ, again, with very little developer lift, added us to support the higher call volumes, get wholesale pricing. They didn't have to pay the fees like both Twilio and Plivo both wanted several $1,000s to get to the 10 to 15 calls per second. And by the way, they were also paying for calls that were rounded at a much longer length. And thinQ only rounds our call, to every 6 seconds instead of every 60 seconds. So all that adding together was, with thinQ, they were able to more easily provision and port new marketing numbers much more quickly. They were able to customize their call routing across our 40 carriers and get that 10 to 15 calls per second call volume that they were looking for, and also save money. So again, they literally their bills went down by 60%. They have a much better relationship with support. We have a great support team here that can walk you through everything from the setup to scaling your traffic over time, and really being here when you need us most, and giving you the flexibility and the tools that you need to better run your SaaS platform. That's what we're here to do with the ultimate control. So I hope that was helpful, everybody. I told you that I was going to teach you guys how to gain the ultimate control over your communications. The answer lies in thinK's cloud communication platform, thinKIO, but also our APIs that allow you to add us to your existing tech stack or build a new stack very quickly and easily, and realize not only cost savings, but total control. 40 plus carriers unlocked, along with all 5 of the US domestic toll-free carriers if you have toll-free traffic. As well as some other database tools that will help make sure that you're routing your calls most efficiently, E911, all the great things. So thinK is here to be your alternative, carrier, bring your own carrier solution to whatever platform you have to deliver flexibility, control, and savings. And we'd love for you to give us a try. If you head over to thinK.com, click on that Get a Demo link, and we'd be happy to sit again with one of our cloud specialists for 15 minutes. Let's take a look at your setup. Let's talk about your needs, the issues that you're facing, and how our tools can help you solve those problems.